order. And to begin with, we'll call your attention to the Open Meetings Act published here in the council chambers. If you'll now join me in rising for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Look for a motion to approve the consent agenda. Roll call. I'm sorry. I want to get right into it.
Granquist.
Here.
Langy.
Here.
Merrill.
Here.
Clausen.
Here.
Murin.
Here.
Jackson.
Here.
Faust.
Here.
File.
Here.
And now I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved, Your Honor. Second.
Please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative.
With that, motion to approve the full agenda.
So moved. Second.
Please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative.
Moves us to special presentations. Item number 17 on your agenda. Proclamation for April 2017 as Fair Housing Month. This is the Fair Housing Proclamation, whereas April 11th, 2017 marks the 49th anniversary of the passage of the U.S. Fair Housing Law. Title 12 of the Civil Rights Act of 1968 as amended, which enunciates a national policy of fair housing without regard to race, color, creed, national origin, sex, familial status, and handicap, and encourages fair housing opportunities for all citizens. And the Norfolk Housing Agency and the Norfolk Housing Development Division of the City of Norfolk are committed to highlight the Fair Housing Law, Title 12 of the Civil Rights Act of 1968, by continuing to address discrimination in our community, to support programs that will educate the public about the right to equal housing opportunities, and to plan partnership efforts with other organizations to help assure every American of their right to fair housing. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Josh Moaning, Mayor of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska, by the power vested in me, do hereby proclaim April 2017 as Fair Housing Month. And I don't believe we have anyone here tonight to receive this, so we'll move on to the next proclamation for Friday, April 28th, 2017 as Arbor Day. The Arbor Day Proclamation. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And this holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. And Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world. Trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, lower our heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And trees in our city increase property value, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Now, therefore, I, Josh Moaning, Mayor of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska, by the power vested in me, do hereby proclaim April 28, 2017 as Arbor Day in the City of Norfolk, and urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day by supporting efforts to protect trees and woodlands, planting and caring for trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations, and participating in a tree planting opportunity on their property or in their neighborhood. Anyone here to receive this proclamation this evening? With that, we will move into public hearings and related action. Item number 19 on your agenda. I will open a public hearing at the request of SCM 10X Norfolk 1120 LLC for OL Shear Company to consider a zoning change from I-1 Light Industrial District to C3 Service Commercial District on 2 parcels of property addressed as 1150 South 13th Street and 1130 South 13th Street. Opening the discussion on this will be Valerie.
Thank you. This property is the northwest corner of 13th Street and Omaha. It's currently zoned I-1, and they, like I said, requested to a C3 commercial. This zone change came about because when they first started looking at this property, the uses of restaurants and an urgent care was permitted in I-1, and then we made that land use matrix change at the end of December, and they're now conditional use permits. So that's why they're requesting a C3 zoning, because those are permitted in that zoning category now. And the commercial district is in accordance with the comprehensive plan.
Any questions for Val on that? It is a public hearing, so anyone wishing to make comment is welcome to at this time. Val, to be frank, I was a little bit surprised that this area was still light industrial. It seems like that's a common, almost default zoning designation in a lot of the city. So commercial certainly seems to make better sense, and as you said, fits with our new comprehensive plan and the character of the surrounding area. Any questions, comments from council?
Well, Your Honor, I think a lot of that went back to, you know, what went through that area or close to that area was rail track. And as that's gone away and been rerouted, it isn't until at what point in time it's looking at getting developed that it actually comes into more in tune with what the area is.
Yeah, I think a reasonable modernization of the code. If no further discussion and no public comment, Beth, I'd ask for a planning commission report.
The Norfolk Planning Commission held a public hearing on March 21, 2017, at the request of SCM 10X Norfolk 1120 LLC for O.L. Shear Company to consider a zoning change from I-1 light industrial to C3 service commercial on two parcels addressed as 1150 South 13th and 1130 South 13th. The Planning Commission recommends approval on an 8-0 vote.
Okay. That, I will close the hearing and move to item number 20. Look for a motion to consider ordinance number 5463, approving a zoning change from I-1 to C3 on two parcels of property located or addressed as 1150 South 13th and 1130 South 13th Street.
Your Honor, I'd move consideration of ordinance 5463.
Okay. Further discussion among the council? Again, seems like an effort to pave the way for redevelopment on one of our major corridors. If no further discussion, short title, Beth?
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Madison County, Nebraska, amending the zoning district map of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska, providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and providing for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Okay, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5463 carries on first reading.
Your Honor, in light of the fact that we had no objection or anything to this, and it's actually just changing that area to be more reflective of what it is, I would move that we suspend the rules and pass this ordinance on second and third.
Okay. If no discussion, please vote.
All council members voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5463 carries on second and third.
Okay. Item number 21. I will open a public hearing at the request of Norfolk Area Business Group LLC to consider a zoning change from C3 Service Commercial District to R3 Multiple Family Residential District on property addressed as 3304 West Koenigstein Avenue. And Val, would you please open the discussion for us on this?
Yes, thank you. I've brought up our zoning map, and just so that you can see, this area here is the property that we're discussing today. It does have R3 zoning on 3 sides, and across the road to the south is C3. And it's currently zoned C3, and they're requesting it to R3, and their application requested townhomes. And it is in conformance with our comprehensive plan. There are some objection letters that I think everyone has gotten, but it does not meet the 20% with the conformance with the comprehensive plan.
Thank you, Valerie. Any questions, comments for Val on that?
Val, is there some other apartments in that area right now?
I don't believe apartments, there are 3-unit townhomes, so it's not just 2-family townhomes in that area. There are 3 units out there also, which would require the R3 zoning, because R2 zoning, you can only go up to 2. So that's why the R3 is there.
This is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to comment at this time, please come forward.
I'm Ruth Alberts, and I live out there.
Ruth, can we have you sign in? There should be a sheet in front of you to
Oh, yeah.
sign in. Thank you.
And I guess my only concern is, and I've been told that they don't plan on putting an apartment house, but that would ruin our property area out there if they would build an apartment house. Townhouses, I have no problem with. So can they put a planned development on top of it? So we know exactly what they're building? I guess is my question.
I think theoretically, the answer would be yes. Val, can you comment a little bit on that? What a PUD, talk a little bit about what a PUD is versus the zoning change application.
A zone change alone would allow them any permitted use in the R3 zoning. If you put a planned development on top of that, then you have to specifically say where your building's going to go, and you can't increase density or change things like that without going back and asking for a planned development amendment.
Anyone else wishing to comment?
Good evening. My name is Jed Christensen. I am here tonight representing Norfolk Area Business Group, the applicant for the zoning change. As was shared, we're requesting the zoning change to R3. As you look at the map there, we just feel that it's probably more in line being bordered on 3 sides with other R3, that it creates probably a little better plan for the area than maybe what was originally drawn out. Our intention is to construct townhouses, and I know there's some concern on apartments, and that is not our intention, and frankly, with the size of that lot, I would struggle to see how anybody could build an apartment on there. The lot itself just is not big enough to do that. So for anybody that has that concern, it's going to be the matching townhomes to just like the other 3 sides that are right around it. I'm also a owner out there in other areas, own an office building as well as some other open land, and so very familiar with the area. Have been an owner out there for a while, and as you look at this lot, just feel that it's probably a better it's better purposed for that. And there's any questions, would be happy to answer any, if anybody has any.
Thanks, Jed. Do you have an idea of, at this point, how many townhomes you're looking at on that lot?
Well, right now it's one lot, and so you can't have multiple dwellings. You could only build one structure.
Okay, gotcha.
So the answer to that is one right now, unless we would look to subdivide the lot. But at this time, right now it's one lot, so it'd be one structure.
Okay. Any other questions for Jed? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else wishing to comment at this time? Okay. Seeing none, I will ask for a planning commission report, Beth.
The Norfolk Planning Commission held a public hearing on March 21, 2017, at the request of Norfolk Area Business Group to reconsider a zoning change from C3 Service Commercial to R3 Multiple Family on property at 3304 West Kenningstein. The Planning Commission recommends approval on an 8-0 vote.
Okay, with that, I'll close the hearing, move to item number 22, for a motion to consider ordinance number 5464, approving a zoning change from C3 to R3 on property addressed as 3304 West Kenningstein Avenue.
Your Honor, I would offer for consideration ordinance number 5464.
Second.
Okay. Discussion, comments among council?
Your Honor, when I looked at the package and this came out and I saw this, I was going, okay, this makes a lot of sense there, because that's exactly, I mean, it's as Mr. Christensen noted and as Valerie noted, was that it's surrounded by R3 on 3 sides. And I guess I would be more fearful of apartments occurring in the R3 to the northeast area than I would in this small parcel of land that way, so. The street Kenningstein along through there creates a natural buffer between C3 and R3. I can see no downside to this move.
Other comments?
I think to put some of their minds at ease, like Mr. Christian stated, it is a small lot. It'd be really hard for them to put high density on there just because of the parking requirements they'd have. You don't have enough room for the parking lot they'd have to include, so they wouldn't be able to do what your ultimate fear is. The plan they're presenting is where they're probably gonna have to stick with, so.
So I'd have to agree with that. Certainly appears to be, the plans certainly appear to be consistent with the surrounding area and the comprehensive plan, and again, as it is one smaller lot with no intention to subdivide, developers are pretty limited in what they are able to do there, so. Any other comments from council? If not, short title, Beth?
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Madison County, Nebraska, amending the zoning district map of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska, providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and providing for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Okay, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5464 carries on first reading.
Your Honor, I would move that we suspend the rules and pass this ordinance on second and third reading.
Second.
Okay. If no discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5464 carries on second and third.
Moving on to the regular agenda, item number 23, for a motion to consider approval of ordinance number 5461, annexing a tract of land generally located in the southwest corner of the intersection of Highway 275 and 37th Street. And just to note, this ordinance number 5461 passed on first reading at the March 20th meeting. And
Your Honor, I would introduce ordinance number 5461 on second reading.
Second?
okay. Dennis, we kick off discussion here on this.
Yes. This is a annexation request for a development of about 60 acres on the southwest corner of 37th and Norfolk Avenue. I think it'd be a good addition to the city of Norfolk. This is the second reading. Again, takes 3 separate meetings, so we can only pass it on second reading tonight. It's the start of a development. We got a request today from the developer with a list of dates that they'll be working on, so they'll be moving forward. This project will be a project that they'll be looking for a TIF on, and that project will start here probably the first of the month, 1st of May. Work through aiming for completion of the city processes by about the 1st of September.
And Dennis, the intent then for the developer is to start work on the property, if everything goes according to plan, sometime yet this year.
That would be what I read into his schedule, and that's consistent with what they've been telling us. I think they're ready to move forward with some of the components. As we heard Mr. Anderson visit with this last city council meeting, they have a couple feet of fill to haul in there, so that is a considerable number of trucks.
Sure, yeah. A lot of work there, and we did hear from developer a couple weeks ago. Large project in scale, including a number of different things, but certainly a project that helps us move forward in a number of ways, including new housing in the community. I think the first phase calls for 80 to 85 some new apartment units, so something that's much needed in the community. So, any further discussion on the council? If not, short title, Beth.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska to annex to said city a part of the southeast quarter of Section 19 and part of the northwest quarter of the northwest quarter and part of the north half of the southwest quarter of the northwest quarter, all in Section 29, and part of the northeast quarter of the northeast quarter and part of the north half of the southeast quarter of the northeast quarter, all in Section 30, all in Township 24 North, Range 1, west of the 6th Principal Meridian, Madison County, Nebraska.
All right, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Ordinance 5461 carries on second reading only.
Okay. Number 24, I'll look for motion to consider ordinance number 5465, authorizing the sale of property located at 1004 Kenningstein to Andrew and Brooke Sherbeck for $12,250.
Your Honor, I'd move consideration of ordinance 5465.
Second?
Okay. Clint, can you refresh our memory on this?
This is a continuation of the sale of this property. This was fire damaged property. City resources were utilized to tear down the property. We acquired the property from the owner before we tore it down, and the purchase agreement for this was on the last council meeting. That was one you'll recall that Lyle talked to us about having taken bids on in a competitive process. So this will just get the next step forward so that the publications remonstrance can run and we can complete the transaction in about 60 days or so.
Okay, thank you. Straightforward enough. Any questions, comments on that, council? If not, short title, please, Beth.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska to authorize the sale of city property, to provide the terms of sale and authorize the mayor to execute and deliver a quitclaim deed to the property, to provide for a remonstrance to said sale as provided by law, to provide when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and to provide for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Thank you, Beth. Please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Ordinance 5465 carries on first reading.
Your Honor, I move we suspend the rules and pass ordinance 5465 on second, third. Second.
Okay, if no discussion on that, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Ordinance 5465 carries on second and third.
All right, and finally, number 25, administrative report. We'll look to Randy to give us update on the comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal year ended September 30th, 2016, along with the related auditor's letter. Randy.
Yes, Your Honor. There are actually two financial reports included in your agenda packets, as you mentioned. They're under enclosure 25, beginning on page 55. The first of these is the comprehensive annual financial report itself, and the second is the auditor's management letter. Normally, you'd see three reports when we bring the CAFR to you. There's usually a single audit report in here also. This is the first time in many years, I can't remember the last time, but we have on occasion come under the single audit threshold, and this year we did. Last year we spent almost $700,000 of federal awards, and this year we spent less than $250,000 of federal awards. And they also moved the single audit threshold up this year from $500,000 of expenditures to $750,000. So we were well under it this year. That doesn't happen very often. It may happen a little bit more frequently with that increased threshold amount. But that saves the auditors a significant amount of work when they have to review the federal awards programs. And it saved us $4,000 in audit fees this year, being under that single audit threshold. The big difference in our federal award expenditures was in the community development block grants. We spent $533,000 of block grant funding last year and only $108,000 this year. Most of the prior year expenditures were related to Prospect Avenue street improvements. Since we don't have a separately issued single audit report this year, you'll see in the section at the end of the comprehensive financial report, there's a government auditing reports included there. And that begins on page 160 of your agenda packet. If you look at those, you'll notice that there are clean reports. There are no internal control weaknesses reported, no non-compliance with laws or regulations, and no audit findings or question cost. The remainder of the CAFR is similar to last year's, and as I mentioned, it begins on page 55 of the agenda packets. On page 74 of the agenda packet is the independent auditor's report on the financial statements, and that's a clean opinion that the city's financial statements are fairly presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. The best place to look for a broad overview of the city's financial condition is the two government-wide financial statements. They're on pages 30 and 31 of the CAFR, which are pages 92 and 93 of the agenda packets. These statements are prepared on the full accrual basis of accounting, similar to how most businesses prepare their financial statements. Statement of activities on page 93 of the agenda packets is similar to a business's income statement, and I'll focus my review on that page of the CAFR. You'll notice at the top of this page, top half of the page, there's a listing of governmental activities down the left-hand side, and for instance, public works, public safety, library are listed on the left-hand side, and then the expenses on a full accrual basis are in the next column to the right of that, and that includes depreciation expense. I'll kind of use community improvement and development as an example as I go through this. You'll see they had $4,217,807 of expenses last year, and this would be expenses related to housing and economic development. The next three columns are the program revenues related to each one of those activities the city undertakes, and first of those is charges for services, and you'll see the community improvement and development function had $113,526 of charges for services. This was money the city received from the housing agency for our personnel that administer the housing agency's Section 8 program. And the next column over is operating grants and contributions. You'll see the city received $238,000 of these grants for the community improvement and development function, and these were primarily for things like housing rehab and the sod improvement program. And then the final column under program revenues is capital grants and contributions. There weren't any of those for the community improvement function last year. but if there would have been, they would have showed up in this column. There were other functions that did have capital grants. If you go up a couple lines from that, you'll see there was $375,000 for the library was a capital grant, and that's the city's one half of the funding of the Civic and Community Center Financing Fund for the library renovation and expansion. We'll be getting another half as we go through the project. And then you net those costs and you net those revenues out from the expenses and get a net cost, which is broken down between the governmental activities and the business type activities. And as you would expect, the governmental activities are those, they're all showing a net expense, and that's what you'd expect, because those are the types of things like public safety that you don't expect to have revenues that match the cost of providing those services. They're subsidized out of the general revenues, such as property and sales tax. The business type activities, water, sewer, solid waste, those are the type of activities you'd expect the revenues to cover the cost. In other words, the users pay for those costs. And that's exactly what you see. All of our governmental activities had net expense, and water, sewer, and solid waste had net revenue. In the case of the community improvement and development, you'll see a net expense of over $3.8 million compared to the net expense of less than $232,000 in the prior year. And that's a $3.6 million increase, which sounds huge, and it is huge, but that was the LB 840 funding for the pipeline. That's what caused that increase. Another thing I'd like to point out as you're looking at the activities reported in the top half of the financial statement is we have debt service showing immediately below the community improvement and development line. That's a little bit misleading. It's interest only because this is on a full accrual basis. And that went down significantly, going from about $673,000 last year to $454,000 this year. And that's because of the refunding of the recreation facility bonds that we did in January 2016. We not only issued refunding bonds for that, but we had collected occupation taxes in excess of debt service of $2 million in the first 5 years of that bond issue. We were holding those in the debt service fund until the call date. We used that $2 million to pay down the rec facility bonds and also refunded them. The interest rate was about half of what it was on the original issue. And because of the lower interest rates and the reduction in principal, we reduced interest expense by that over $200,000 you see that year. And through the term of the bonds, that'll be almost a $3.5 million decrease in interest expense. We shortened up the maturity of those by about 7 or 8 years. And on the bottom half of the statement of activities shows the general revenues that are used to pay for the net expense that was in the top half. And the largest of the general revenues by far is sales tax. Looks like we had a significant increase in sales tax. We did. We had a $1.25 million increase going from $9.3 million to $10.6 million. That's a little bit misleading because that's all due to the extra half cent for the library. This was the first full year of that extra half cent. We wouldn't have had that extra half cent, would have been almost flat, actually a small decrease in sales tax. Next largest general fund revenue source is MPPD lease revenue. That shows under the use of property line on the financial statement. If you look at that, that also had a slight decrease. So we had our two largest general revenue sources decreasing slightly if you take into account the extra half cent for the library. The third largest revenue source is property tax, and that did increase a little bit, increased a little over $52,000. That was solely because of increases in assessed value. For 15-16, we left the levy rate unchanged. And when you combine these general revenues with the net expense or net revenue shown in the top half of the statement, you get the change in net position, which shows on about the fifth line up from the bottom. And that's what would be net income in a private business. And as you can see, we had a $4.4 million positive increase in that position, or basically what would be a $4.4 million net income if this was a private business. On the governmental side, there was a $2.8 million increase, and one of the reasons for this increase was that $1.25 million increase in sales tax I mentioned earlier, and most of the remaining increase was due to accumulating highway allocation funds in anticipation of some large projects coming up, such as the Norfolk Avenue Bridge project. $1.6 million of the increase in that position was in the business type activities, which support the city's three enterprises funds, the water, sewer, and solid waste. This was comparable to the increase last year in those enterprise funds. We had about $600,000 of that increase in the water fund, $900,000 in the sewer fund. And we're setting water and sewer rates to fund the large capital improvements shown in the water and sewer master plans. And then getting to the second report in the agenda packets, the auditor's management letter, that's on page 191 of the agenda packets. This is a letter where they talk about their responsibilities under generally accepted auditing standards, and it's a clean report. They note no disagreements with management or any other difficulties performing the audit. I'll answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Andy? It's a big year. That's a lot of stuff to track. You're handy. I'm glad you're in charge of that. I think a good reminder, too, of what was accomplished here over the last year in terms of major investments in infrastructure. The pipeline was a major investment, the library, and other improvements that citizens have been willing to support with their dollars. And so I think it puts us in a good position in the coming year for further growth. Any other comments, questions for Andy? Okay, seeing none, that closes this meeting of the City Council. Thank you.